All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Curry, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. Today I've got Jason Dunn with me, author, ultra athlete, mindset coach, and public speaker. Jason was on the show a few years ago, and he's got a book coming out, which I am so excited to hear about for a couple of reasons. First of all, because I know how successful his last book was, and I know the quality of his work and the type of and the effort he puts into anything that he sets his mind to. But secondly, because I find it very, very interesting that one of the main things I remember from the conversation I had with him a few years ago, which to this day has stuck with me, is it really connects to the theme of this book. And I'll explain that in a moment. But Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure, Michael. Great to be here again, mate.
Mate, I remember when we had our last chat, you mentioned to me that you had a fear of swimming. You mentioned to me that I think at the time you smoked, you had a fear of swimming, and you couldn't ride a bike. You weren't that experienced riding bikes. And you overcame that fear, and I think you went on to compete in, 14 different Ironman competitions.
Yep.
And you've written a book called Greatness Doesn't Care, which I'm so intrigued to learn more about. It's being released very, very soon, I believe, over the next few weeks, I think, or over the next month.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And just the whole idea of the book about, the fact that greatness doesn't discriminate, and it's not just about being better than others, but being bolder than your fears. And in a way, you're not redefining greatness, but you're defining greatness, I think. That's the impression I get. Again, I haven't read the book, of course, but please, if you could just maybe start by just explaining a little bit about the book, when it comes out, and I'm intrigued as to what motivated you or I should say inspired you to write it.
Great questions. Thanks, mate. Very nice setup there. Thank you. Yes, it's been a few years. And look, what I set out to do when I wrote my first book, Unlimited, which is essentially about how you can pivot your life and take a different pathway with one small decision followed by obviously many more small decisions. But the essence of the book is based on my life, and the essence is you can change it at any point in time, and you can actually build a mindset. And of course, your mindset is the thing that determines and governs every single action and everything you do. You can build an unlimited mindset, which means that you create the belief, and belief, by the way, is not hope. Belief is, evidence-based, that you're capable of anything and that there are no limits. And so that's what I set out to do. I think I'm pretty happy with how it's done. Predominantly, the influence it's had on different people around the world. And I just, I absolutely love the fact that there's not a week that goes by where somebody I've never met and don't know becomes a friend and tells me they changed their life because they read my book. And for me, that brings more meaning than anything. So with Greatness Doesn't Care, look, and I'm going to share some of the evolution for me over the last few years. I feel that I've grown so much. There came a point where I don't know whether I'd say I became dissatisfied, but I was, quite critical of my own writing capability, and what I'd set out to do with Unlimited, I don't think I really nailed. And you're writing a book now. Congratulations, and that's very exciting for you. You will know that writing and trying to communicate with anyone, regardless of their personality and what they've been through, that is a challenging thing, and to picture the right level. So what I wanted to do, what I knew, I realized perhaps a year and a half ago, was that I knew I could do much better. And because I've learned a great deal about myself, and we'll talk about that internal reflection and changing yourself as before you change the rest of the world or change anybody externally, I knew I could do better. And so I set about designing, if you like, or creating a construct that my hope and my belief was that any human being anywhere could, pick up this roadmap and identify the any of the steps to greatness. And I believe there are 14 steps to greatness. I mean, you can argue the categories and subcategories, etc., but could identify with the place or the step that they're stuck or they've stalled or they're actually doing okay, but they haven't mastered. And, that's for them is the next and most significant opportunity for growth. And so that's what I set out to do. And the essence for me, is always trying to be better than I was yesterday. And, of course, there's going to be days when you're not going to be better. You can have very average days, but it's that constant striving to be better. And so that's what I set out to do. And I just, the journey has been amazing and I've absolutely loved it. Now we're kind of on the cusp of, we're, 12 days away from release in Australia and New Zealand. It goes to the rest of the world later in the year, but it's going into 600 bookstores as it is. So I'm feeling pretty happy and excited about that. But yeah, so I wanted to make it appropriate to everyone because sometimes people will read your story or they'll see the cover of a book and, it'll be a pretty out there picture of, going over the Himalayas or, stuff like that. And people disassociate because they go, well, that's not me. I'm not an ultra runner or Ironman. And that's not something that I want to do. So this is extremely generic and appropriate to anyone and everyone. And yeah, this is my next best shot at helping people to become better than they were yesterday. And no matter how small that incremental increase is, and to be able to have a identifiable construct. I mean, you and I have worked in financial advice all of our life, which is very structured. These are topics and mindset. These things aren't. These things are sort of deep topics. So hopefully that's. I believe that's what I've done. And the title "Greatness Doesn't Care." What I again wanted to convey is that greatness is definition of greatness for me is accomplishing or achieving something or things that are aligned to your purpose that require you to overcome struggle, adversity, failure, and to persevere and prevail, and achieving something or giving your best shot to something that brings you meaning. And it might be multiple things that bring you meaning, but you know, um, I tend to find that pretty much most people I meet have some level of discontent or dissatisfaction with some aspect of their life. And that means, that's kind of the spark. And then you need, the incentive or the motivation. And then you need a whole bunch of things backed up behind that to ensure that, when difficulty and struggle strikes, that you're able to deal with that. You're able to learn from that and you're able to find a pathway that keeps you going, aligned to your purpose until you achieve what you set out to do. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. But yeah, greatness doesn't care. It does not. It does not care how old you are. It doesn't care where you're from, your religion, your color, your beliefs, what you've been through. It just doesn't care. And so I've set out to demonstrate that what it does care about is you find a particularly meaningful purpose and that you go after it with everything you have. And I've got many examples in the book of, incredible humans. We have people that my achievements pale in comparison to who have demonstrated, much later in life, or have achieved just truly remarkable things because they have a purpose that burns bright and they have mastered most or all of the 14 steps to greatness. So greatness is available to anyone and everyone. And just because you're 45, you're 50, makes no difference. This is about becoming better than yesterday. And once you open your mind and you start to believe, and belief is one of the 14 steps, because you have the evidence, because you start taking small steps, and that proves to you that you can do this, and you are capable. That's the very essence of the book.
And why do you feel, without giving, I mean, you don't feel like you need to give certain examples, but why do you feel that a lot of us limit our definition of greatness to, our gender, religion, where we come from, or how much we have? What do you think it's just the fact that growing up, for example, some people will just think, well, you know what, because there's two ways to look at it. There are some that they grow up in a certain environment and circumstance, and they don't get ahead because it's sort of, whether they've got damaged confidence or whatever it may be, it stops them from wanting, basically damages their belief that they'll ever be able to become great. But then you've got others that grow up in really hard circumstances that actually thrive in that situation, and they end up becoming great. And you hear stories of lots of people that started off with not much and now it's changed. And what do you think it's just a personality trait difference? Do you think it's maybe some people, that second group I was talking about, maybe they've read a book like yours, or they've had a person in their life that's influenced their thought process? Or do you think it's luck?
It's I think it's I think it's random, because our minds are very very complex,
Yes.
and circumstance plays, as you would know, a huge part in determining identity. Especially the formative years, and I've had a lot of reflection, especially while writing this book, about my formative years and who I became and maybe why I did things, and that was to understand it, not to blame anyone, but I certainly, there are lots of characteristics and traits and values that I have that are a product of my upbringing. And so, yeah, look, it is random how people, and when people change is also random. It might be, the dissatisfaction becomes so great that people are just determined to find another or a better way. And but life shapes our identity, and we all have identities. No matter what, we might have an identity that we project or portray, and that's been me throughout different parts of my career, my life, because I've had to do some pretty tough things, not as tough as some, but I've had to do some pretty tough things. So that shapes our identity. That's how we see ourselves. And that's the element that actually needs to change. And whether you realize, you might see someone that projects a facade and a personality or a capability, or whatever. Mostly that's what we think people need to see or want to see, especially in the professional environment. And so that's the way we kind of chug along. And life's busy, and we do that. And yeah, I think it's when people actually become dissatisfied with that identity. And I think there's a question most of us, and this question came to me many, many times, was, is this all I'm meant to be? When I say all, that's not a derogatory term for you're less, but it's like, is this the limit of me? Is this, is there more out there for me, or have things plateaued, or, are they, gradually with age, are they kind of going downhill? And that's when people become dissatisfied. So my change was, as we talked about last time, was this massive snowballing regret that I had given up, and I'd made a decision at 15, followed my head instead of my heart. And it was a very tough decision to make, not to follow my boyhood dream of being a professional football player, soccer player in the UK. And we're all watching the World Cup, so we know, probably got some sense about how big that is in Europe, especially, and in the UK. So that was my dream, and I gave up the dream because I had to follow my school studies, and it was just it was almost impossible to travel to the club that made me an offer. And then I spent 20 years regretting that. And life starts, family starts, you get incredibly busy with work. And I would look myself in the mirror and I just didn't like a whole bunch about my identity. And I knew that I was capable of so much more. I knew I had pretty, good, a very hard work ethic. But, I would take, sometimes I would just take the easiest path to instant gratification, least amount of effort, most amount of gratification. And that can become addictive. And so, I started drinking, nicking out from school and going into the pub at lunchtime and having a couple of beers. When I was 15, played some Space Invaders. I started smoking and probably a few other bad habits. And this regret just snowballed. And I, I had purpose in life, and we all have different purposes, purpose of our family, but we don't have enough stillness, I find, to actually define that. And so I was searching for the purpose where I could go prove to myself, not to the rest of the world, prove to myself that I could be and not that I could have been. Because I would say after way too many drinks, I'd say to people, oh, I could have been a professional soccer player. And, it was all kind of almost boastful. But the truth is that I wasn't. I didn't, I made a decision with my head. I didn't take the risk. I didn't show the courage that I needed to. And it just grew so huge that it had to change. And that's what I did, is I completely changed the pathway of my life. And ever since then, I've just been working on myself for the last 27 years to be better. And better isn't better as in I've got more money and a nicer car and, all that kind of stuff, because they're external reasons, not internal reasons. And just because I have a better car or a really nice car or a really nice house, that does not make me any better than anyone else. And that's focusing on, shiny things. It's focusing on, some of the status symbols of success. But, they bring some meaning, but not real meaning. They don't bring true meaning. So, yeah, I think it's a level of dissatisfaction. But then people often don't know where to start, and they don't have like a construct to follow. And, perhaps they don't have, people around them that have experience and wisdom that can give them advice. And I have learnt unequivocally that, most of wisdom is actually understanding yourself. And the responsibility that comes with wisdom is to pay it forward and to take your years of experience and stuff ups and mistakes and what went right and distill it down so that someone doesn't minimizes the mistakes that they make. So they don't have that, they don't have that construct. And so maybe if I can give you some examples, I think, because I use these all the time, that kind of epitomize for me why most people don't, really change, and why they don't, achieve what they set out to do and achieve something truly meaningful. I don't mean that in a negative sense. This is just a practical observation. Is they don't define purpose for starters. And you would know this in financial advice. It's like when you ask someone, tell me about your future, tell me about retirement, and people that haven't given it that much thought. And they'll even if they can, they'll articulate a goal, but the goal actually doesn't really bring meaning. So let me give an example of why we know most people fail at things that they set out to do that are a stretch for them. New Year's resolutions are the time when most people, the mass population sets some sort of emotional goal or something that they're really dissatisfied that they know will improve their life. But what they do is they set a goal. I mean, what do you think are the sort of top four things that we know people set New Year's resolutions around? What do you think they are?
Health and
Yep.
finances.
Yep, absolutely. Three of the top four are related to health, well-being, fitness. And the other is around, financial well-being, financial security, wealth creation. They're the three.
And they're
So
usually
we
the
know
two
that.
things they neglect as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that epitomizes, the essence of there's a level of dissatisfaction because people know that they're not being the best, anywhere near the best they can be. And so they set this resolution, with kind of emotional wave behind them and euphoria, because it's New Year and it's like this is my time, and it's well intentioned. And so one of the things in there that's very common is, I want to lose weight, and people will go, my New Year's resolution is I'm going to lose 8 kilos or 5 kilos or 10 or whatever it is, and off they go. So, but what they don't have is a coach, and what they don't have is a framework. So the very first thing, and I would always do this, as do you in financial advice, is get people to define what that actually means. Because if you set a goal, even if you achieve the goal's done. You've then got to go and find another goal and another goal and another goal. And so for me, if I was going to define a purpose, and it should be a purpose because health, well-being, vitality, and a long life that you live with meaning comes down to how physically and mentally fit you are. So that goal should be, if I was going to write that purpose, it would be, you know, I want to become the wellest and the fittest that I've ever been, or the fittest I've ever been for 10 years. And, I want to live with vitality and energy so I can play with my kids and grandkids, and, I can enjoy retirement, feel good, feel healthy, want to travel. I want to feel the wellest that I've ever been. Now that is a purpose, and that's not a purpose that is a goal. That is a purpose that you will have till you're 75 or 80 or 85, how long you live, and that will determine how well you'll live, and it will impact every other element of your life, family, career, etc. So that's a purpose. So then once you have that purpose, you need a plan. And I have planned, for the last 27 years, I've always had a strategic and a tactical plan. And the strategic plan, might be a goal that you set for 5 or 10 years. And for most people, when you do that, that's actually almost debilitating because it's so far away from where you are now. On a tough day, you'll probably just give up. But the thing about, a plan and a tactical plan is it removes the kind of onerous nature of a big goal, a big purpose, and brings it down to, well, what is it I just need to get up and do today? And so that's how important a plan is. And then you need to find courage. And sometimes it's a small amount, sometimes it's a lot, but it will be many moments of courage. And then you need to develop your mindset because, start developing it then and evolving it and nurturing it, because that controls absolutely everything, what you do, your emotions, how you feel. And then the fifth step of greatness is discipline. And I love the way the Stoics, and sorry, in Greatness Doesn't Care, I have a bunch of, Stoic references, and the Stoics, discipline is the very heart of their philosophy. And they quite simply define discipline as the alignment of wisdom and action, the alignment of wisdom and action, because you can be busy doing a whole bunch of things that actually aren't really important and will not align to your purpose and will not get you to where it is that you need or want to be. So wisdom comes from planning. Wisdom comes from understanding this pathway that, and it might be a year, or 6 months, a year, it might be 10 years, it might be 20 years, but you have a broad vision, and you sit down and you work that backwards with milestones, as we do in financial advice, and you work it back with milestones till it boils down to this absolutely kind of understandable and digestible thing of, this is what I need to do today. In fact, I shouldn't even be thinking about, what I need to do in 6 months' time, because what really matters is the wisdom to know what it is that I should do today, and then the discipline to show up and do what it is that you know you need to do today. And then 365 days later, or 5,000 days later, the only way you can influence something significant in 5,000 days is if you do what you need to do today. And then that progressively builds, if that makes sense. And then discipline is Yeah, well, it's the alignment of wisdom and action, but it's showing up no matter what's happening in the world, no matter how you're feeling, because there will be days, and that's the issue with motivation, inspiration is you don't have those on days when you're not feeling so well or you're crap or you're tired or whatever. So discipline is the alignment of wisdom and action and literally showing up and doing it no matter how you feel. All of that is influenced by your mindset. All of it, everything.
These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a free 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au. To me, like, no, that I really resonate with that mindset thing, and it actually makes me think of that story, the 4 minute mile. You know how for
Yeah,
so many years, no one humans didn't believe that they could run
yeah,
a mile in less than 4 minutes, and
yeah,
it was like, no, can't happen until
yeah.
a guy did it from the UK, I believe, or is from the UK, and so
Roger Bannister,
a
yeah.
runner in the UK, yes,
Roger
and
Bannister, yep.
yes, Roger Bannister, and then since then, so many people have done it, and it was just a mindset thing. It's not that people got healthier or
It
or
is.
anything else.
Absolutely. I mean, you see that now. I mean, that now applies to the marathon. Once Kipchoge, even in a controlled race, ran 2 hours, and then all of a sudden, you have two guys run under sub 2 hours in the London Marathon. And yeah, there are other reasons for that. I mean, there's technology, shoes, training, a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's what will happen. With the marathon as well. So everything is mindset. And why I think you asked earlier, why is it that people don't change their lives or succeed? And broadly, the biggest reason is fear. It is fear, and we all have fear. I mean, for me, the thing that I had to face was my greatest fear that I used to have nightmares about was because I couldn't swim, was drowning, and that was all consuming. So that's what I went and faced. And I tell you, mate, like even in my 14th Ironman race, when many years of racing and 14th Ironman race, and I started in a wave, 1,500 people in Lake Taupo, New Zealand. I had a small amount of panic because I was getting hit by arms and legs, and you know, you, I wasn't breathing, and I had to deal with that. So you don't necessarily ever overcome fear. You learn to walk beside it. Fear is fear is it's not necessarily to overcome. It's just to face, because once you face, you realize that most things in life are never as bad as you think they're going to be. I mean, sometimes occasionally they are. I get that, but most of the fears we have are exaggerated, and so we have to face them. So that's why, as most humans, whether it's embarrassment, failure, that's not who I am. That's not my identity. Fear consumes us, and fear kills greatness, unequivocally. So I do write a lot about techniques to overcome, or well, to at least face fear, and instead of fear controlling you, you take back the control, and you do that gradually. Lots of people hope for things. Hope's not enough. Hope is, you're not doing something about hope. Belief is, the eighth and one of the most critical steps to greatness, because you gradually and slowly build your confidence, and you build actual evidence that you're capable of doing something, because you're on the way, because I tried this and it worked, and I improved a bit, or I got fit, or whatever. So yeah, I can do that. And you just keep building the evidence, which goes back to ensuring that you're planning, and then just getting up every day, and doing it. And yeah, look, we all have fear. And I might have mentioned to you one of the last big fears I faced, was on social media, because when you put yourself out there, people, I don't want to be a role model. I'm not I've made tons and tons of mistakes. I've stuffed up. That's, don't look at me and think that I'm perfect, but hopefully people will listen to, what I've found and what others have done, and go, yeah, that actually makes sense. I can add that to my life. But when I wrote my first book, I was on LinkedIn, because I had to, because I was a professional and CEO and etc. And but I didn't have any other social media. I had a Facebook account with 10 friends because my life was private and I kept it private. And all of a sudden, I had to completely unveil that. And with my first book, and go, here's my life. And no matter what, you will find there are people that are, unhappy and discontent, and they will see that as you putting yourself out there as being, look at me, and they'll have a crack at you, and that's actually what happened, and so that was a big fear, and I had to stand back from that. But when you get somebody, get trolls, you people that are unhappy that you're never going to meet, you're never going to know, and they put it out there publicly, and so my philosophy around that became so, but I did it because I knew I had to do it. I had to do it because my purpose was to go out and share my wisdom and help people, hopefully find some of the joy and meaning that I have in my life and share that with people. And so my purpose is so large. Purpose is the antidote to fear because, and it's the antidote to failure, and it's, the antidote to struggle because you go, you know what, this is bigger. So what if there's five people that, 10 people that, are not nice, because hopefully there are 100 people that it will help their life change. And I stepped back from it and said, well, you know what, I'm actually just going. I'm not going to try and convince people. I'm just going to respect their view, say thank you. Look, I hope you're having a great day and hope things are going well for you. And that took the sting out of it. Because people are itching for a bit of they're looking to let out their frustration, their anger, or maybe they're just going, help me. So I changed that, faced that fear, and and now, to a certain degree, I'm here again because greatness doesn't care could do pretty well, which means start to become public in the public domain more and public property. It is what it is, because my purpose is to help 100,000 people, and that is far more powerful than anybody that thinks that they don't like me or whatever opinion they want to have. So fear continues, and so fear is actually a good thing. It's just how you arm yourself and how you take back control. And if you do that and you work on the other steps, you will find your greatness. You absolutely will. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think as someone is on this journey to greatness, or their version of greatness, I should say, you know, I think, and I'm sure you even probably touch on this in your book, but, staying motivated is hard. It's some days it's easy, some days it's hard. And whether that's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because the excitement wears off, or whether there's obstacles that come up, up against you, or
Obstacles, struggle.
struggle,
Yeah.
what are some tips and strategies that you
Yeah.
can also
Okay.
share on
Well,
that?
I'm glad you led into that. Thank you. So yeah, this is kind of really interesting. So again, one of the steps is belief. Belief that will get you through difficult times because you have the evidence that you know that you can overcome something. You have the evidence to know what to do when something happens, and you don't spend a lot of time dwelling on the issue. You spend all your time focusing on the solution. So whenever anyone, my family, anyone ever says to me, "Oh, okay, this is happening," and they start to go into the issue, and so I'll listen for a while, and then I will say, "What is the outcome or the solution that you need or that you want? What will be meaningful?" And they'll say, "I go, right, okay, that's what we're going to work on. We're not going to work on this problem. We're actually going to work on this solution." And you can actually, again, you can train. I've trained my mind. I haven't actually in my books. There's a couple of things. I've faced some tough things, and there's a couple of things I haven't put in there because I don't like to write about other people unless they're nice things, or situations. I respect people's privacy, but I've overcome a lot of things. I mean, I've been hospitalized 35 times, about to be 36. I've nearly died a few times, and I've overcome immense. In business, but in personal health. I had a whole bunch of things that could have killed me, and but I found a way to overcome those. And so I think what's most powerful is being able to accept, because most of us, we bemoan struggle, even down to some mindsets are, you can get a lift in the morning in a building and someone will go, be talking to someone, they'll go, oh, the bus was 3 minutes late. Oh, I hate that. I really hate that. And the instant reflection for me is, it is not to judge someone, but go, wow, you hate, like you've created such a negative emotion around something so insignificant and inconsequential that, you know, think about the amount of people on this planet that would actually love to have a bus to get onto, or that was 3 minutes late and not 3 hours. So life is perspective, and I've got a bunch of techniques in the book around how you instantly create perspective, so you don't leave yourself mired in the negativity. You just quickly move on. You just quickly get on with it. And it's that internal mastery. And again, the Stoic philosophy of, you know, you can't change anything outside until you can change things inside. And you can't expect the world or your employer or everyone to do things for you until you're prepared to do them for you. And so the reality is, the fact is, if you want to become better than tomorrow, if you want to try, struggle and failure are absolutely guaranteed. Absolutely guaranteed. So don't kid yourself that they're not. And the more you strive and aspire and try to be better and do bigger and bigger things, they're going to happen. They always have. For me, I've had the most epic failures. And there aren't too many days where I haven't faced some sort of struggle like most of us do. So I accepted it. And then with the acceptance comes the, well, what do I do about it? Because it's going to happen. So how do I deal with it? And I've gone 360 degree or 180 degrees, so the opposite way. And I was able to, and still able to, in the moment of struggle, when something is really difficult, unless it's, something really bad, from a health perspective, someone you love or your family or whatever, and go and actually recognize the struggle and welcome it. So in the moment, and maybe if I can, probably the best example I can give, one of the best examples I think people will understand, at least once a week, if I would run, say, maybe 120, 150 kilometers during the week while also running businesses. And then on a Sunday, I'd run, every week I'd run a 60K, do a 60K run up and down a single 1.5 kilometer hill. And so just non-stop. So it'd be 30 Ks up, 30 Ks down, would take me 6 hours. Sometimes I'd do more than that. And when I did big races, I would do that every 2 or 3 days, as well as training between. So when you might be running up at the fourth time, and because you run 150 Ks during the week and the same week before and same week before, you might be feeling really tired and you don't feel like doing this, and the voice of reason in your head's going, hey, let's just go home, let's quit this, go and do something with your family or friends or whatever, go to lunch. And you've got to battle with that voice of reason. And so when every time in my mind said this is really tough, I would go, great, because it is really tough. This is the thing that will define me. This is the thing when no one's watching that will make me proud of myself. This is the thing that will enable me to go to align to my purpose, which is to go find out what I'm capable of, how far I can go, what I can do. And so other than some critical health, issue, like, something really sad happening, you can overcome everything. You can find a solution. You can at least determine how you respond to it, which again is the Stoic philosophy of, self-mastery. Self-mastery is everything. So you can adapt, and in the moment you go, oh, yes, this is really, I'm feeling really tired. You go, this is what will make me successful. This is how I will prove to myself that I am capable and that I can be the best I can be. So yeah, great. I'm glad I'm struggling, because if I wasn't struggling, I would not be growing. I would not be becoming fitter. I would not be becoming stronger. And so that's kind of how I adapt to that. And I talk about that in both books, but I think I've talked about it more articulately in Greatness Doesn't Care. And as you know, I think last time we talked about it, I chopped words out of my vocabulary 27 years ago that influenced me and other people negatively. So hard, I don't allow myself to think anything's hard. As soon as that thought comes in my head, I just get rid of it. I don't say, I don't go, oh, this is really hard, because as soon as I do, my whole demeanor changes. I think it's hard, and I give myself a reason or excuse potentially not to do it. So I push it out. Words like can't, disappointment, and so on. So, and when you do that, when you're around other people, let me tell you, you hear those words. It's like someone shouting them when people say them, and someone goes, oh, I hate that. And in my head, I think, really? You hate that? Really? Really? Is that bad? Like, is that your mindset? Your whole day must be like that. Your whole day must be like that. So again, it's all techniques to evolve your mind, because you can unlimit it. You can make it anything you want.
Writing a book, I know from experience now that as you're writing a book, there's parts of it which, is just great content. Well, I mean, it's all great content that you want to put out to the world. Some of it's, you can just talk about it very easily and write about it very easily. But there are some parts that are very personal. In this book, is there a particular chapter? Well, I know there is. So knowing you, I know there is. So instead of saying is there, I'll say which of the chapters would you say was the most difficult or the most emotional to write?
Yeah.
Is there a chapter where it was, whether writing it or whether even just going back and reading it and proofreading it, that it just really struck a chord with you and just really meant
Yeah.
the most to you?
You ask the best questions, Michael.
Well, I'm just intrigued.
You asked great questions, mate. So thank you. We didn't set this up. Sorry, anybody that's listening. I didn't know any of these questions. So, yeah, it's a great question. Look, there is lots of personal stuff in there. And when it's really weird, like, I don't know how many people will read it. It might be, I don't know, but it might be a lot. So actually putting yourself out there and sharing that with 10,000, 100,000 strangers, whatever it is, a weird thing. I don't know whether any of it was really difficult, because I've done so much introspection, and I continually try to be a better person, try to be better at things, try to be better for other people. And I think for the last 3 or 4 years, my life has really been focused on just helping people, and just helping people with no expectation and no need for return, just because it feels good and it feels right, and because I can share my wisdom. I believe I have grown. Other people have helped me grow more in the last 3 years, possibly than ever. So let me just context that. And the last step and chapter is vulnerability. So because I've faced and had to deal with so many tough things, whether they're personally, family, work, sport, they've all been tough. And coming back like from death, near death, quite a few times, and running companies, especially if that was a challenge, which, as you know, it is you do tough stuff. You have to become tough, and you become resilient, and resilient in a positive way. And when you run a company, what we think people want to see from us is that we're highly capable, highly confident. We know what's going on, confidence, and so on and so on and so on. And so you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable. You don't allow yourself to say this is hard. You just do it. And vulnerability has been my greatest learning in the last 3 years. And that is that no matter what you've done, you're not better than other people. And I grew up that my life, we talked earlier about, the things that influence who you are. I grew up with ego, and I lived with that for a long time, and I actually didn't like it. And I grew progressively. I disliked it more and more and more. And that's something I've had to constantly work on. And so now, it isn't about that. And vulnerability, saying I stuffed up, I was wrong, I can do better than that, I'm sorry, I will do better than that, I'm sorry. And allowing yourself to be vulnerable is what connects you with human beings. It is the absolute, whether you're a leader of a business, showing vulnerability, showing that, it's okay to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. This is a safe environment. I don't always get it right. And around your family and your friends, it's the same thing. Being able to laugh at yourself, take the piss out of yourself, whatever. All of those things. Vulnerability has been probably the most significant growth for me in my life. And at 62, nearly 63, my life is so full. It's so full of purpose. And I wander around my local suburb and I'm just trying to do things for people and help them. I often sit down and give people advice because I feel they're struggling and for nothing in return, but just being vulnerable, just being human. And that has been the greatest learning for me. That is actually why that is the final chapter. And I've got some examples in there of people who I've met that I've known for decades, and maybe I haven't seen them for a year or two, and I meet them and they go, "Wow, you've changed." Maybe it's the hair as well. I don't know, but they go, "Wow, you've changed. Like what's happened to you?" And it's a lovely feeling because I'm just way more human, and I'm vulnerable, and I can try and give back to people all the time, and that's the version of me that I love. So here I am. I am truly blessed. I'm really, really grateful. I've always been grateful, and gratitude, by the way, is one of the 14 steps as well, because gratitude will fill your life up, and no matter what's happening to you at the moment, there are things to be grateful for. And I kind of have I reckon I used to reconcile. I used to have a stock take, a gratitude stock take every morning because that sets your mindset up. And if you feel like the world's against you and shit's always going wrong, yeah, that's your mindset. You'll never, it's tough to break, really tough to break out of that. But if you wake up and go, wow, I have so much to be grateful for. And there's a couple of other steps of stillness and presence. If you do not have stillness and presence, you'll never reconcile your life. You never will truly feel the meaning of your life. And so you've got to have stillness and presence as well. All these things I've learned, at different stages. Been fortunate enough to gather that wisdom. I've read some, amazing authors on these topics. I love Ryan Holiday, Brene Brown, and so on and so on. And I've got a whole bunch of book recommendations in there, for each of those steps as well. So hopefully that they're going to help people too.
Oh, amazing. And honestly, the last question I had is just whether there was a lesson from the book. So not whether. What is the lesson? What is one lesson from the book that you want people to take away? But I think you've just summed it up perfectly. Like, I think, just the fact that, you've even started talking about the idea of greatness to me is, significant enough. But the fact that in the book, you've broken it down, and even today you've talked through some of that process. Mm-hmm. I think should encourage a lot of people to go out and get a copy of the book, and to read it, because I'm assuming there'll be an audiobook version of this one as well. And also, can you just answer that question, and secondly, just let who's listening to this just to know when it's coming out, where they can get a copy from, and just if they wanted to just learn more about it, where to go.
Well, that's very kind. If you Google me, you'll get loads and loads of stuff, and there are lots of different podcasts and stuff coming up. 12 Days is the in-store and online release in Australia and New Zealand, and so delighted with how that's transpiring. If you're going through an airport, you'll be able to grab a coffee at any shop. I think it's probably 500 or 600 stores in Australia. It's on Australia and New Zealand on just multiple, obviously Amazon. Just go Google it. You'll find many platforms it's on. Audiobook won't be out yet because we go to physical stores in North America and the UK and some other places on November 3. So what we tried to limit it to the availability is Australia and New Zealand, and then the rest of the world later. So the audiobook probably is going to will come out at the same time as the North America and UK release. So yeah, you'll find tons of info about it. And there's 6th of August at Dimmocks in the iconic Dimmocks QVB store. We have a launch. I'm not sure if this will be out. Probably won't be out by then. But yeah, by the time this comes out, you'll just be able to walk into pretty much any bookstore, I believe, and pick up a copy. And the next best, obviously, would be Amazon.
Yeah, amazing. And also, this episode is getting dropped next Friday. So by the time anyone's listening to this,
great.
the book will be coming out in 2 days, basically, or 3 days. And if
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and if they're listening to it after that, the book will already be out. So
yeah, and hopefully, if you're listening to it around then, 6th of August, I think tickets are doing pretty well. Yeah, in conversation, book launch, be some wine and food and stuff, and in the wonderful Dimmocks Sydney CBD store. So you can just Google my name and Dimmocks, and that'll come up.
yeah, perfect. And what I'll do is in the description of this episode, I'll drop a link to the book as well.
Right.
I think
Okay.
I've found something. I'll just confirm it with you before I post it, of course. But I'll post a link to it as well, so people can get just find out about it straight away. And as you may remember, I like to finish all my episodes off with a dad joke as well. And I've got a pretty good one today.
Oh, nice.
Funny enough, I would say also. It's a good one, but it's also thanks to AI, because I asked AI what's a decent dad joke, because I couldn't think of any before. But the question is, what do you call a factory that makes okay products? A satisfactory.
Yeah, I love that one.
You're a dad. I know.
I am, mate. Yeah,
I know you'd appreciate it.
I should have used that on my granddaughters yesterday, but I'm actually going to do that now as a matter of habit when I see them.
You have to. A satisfactory.
Oh, dad, or oh,
and at least with the
whatever.
granddaughters, you can teach them what it means if they're not old enough to understand too. So it's
Absolutely.
yeah. No,
Spot
Jason,
on,
thank
mate.
you so much for your time, mate. It really means a lot to have you on again, and I wish you all the best.
My pleasure. Thanks, Michael. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.